when I book the show, I always try to have someone that means something to me. So tonight, I'm honored to have Isla Ben here. All right. Oh, yeah.
Just in case I go off Rubio.
Okay.
Sometimes the smallest gesture can have the most tremendous impact. I was born in Washington, D.C. about a month after I was adopted on the gray market by a Jewish family from Brooklyn. They had been rejected by Spence Chapin, so they went to the gray market. That was the first time I landed on all fours. Because other than my parents' rather liberal use of physical discipline, the first 5 years of my childhood were phenomenal. Phenomenal. We lived in Canarsie, and I know you hear a lot about Canarsie on the news, and when you do, it's very rarely anything good. And that breaks my heart, because Canarsie was paradise for a small kid. Absolute paradise. My parents and I lived in a two-family house where I had my own bedroom and a playroom, and the family downstairs just happened to be my grandmother and my great-grandmother, my grandmother and grandfather, and my great-grandmother, who I called Bubby. We had a postage stamp backyard with a barbecue grill that my father and grandfather built from bricks, and a furnished basement that my grandparents threw the most amazing New Year's Eve's parties with beautiful deli platters from Grabsteins and people coming from all over the neighborhood to eat and hang out. And they would throw me these wonderful birthday parties there with balloons and streamers and pin the tail on the donkey and all my friends from the neighborhood, big beautiful birthday cakes. It was absolutely heaven on earth. My friends from the neighborhood, my best friend was Susie. She lived like I did in the top floor of a two-family house with her two older sisters, Mona and Amy, and her mother, Jean, and her father, Al. Downstairs, their landlords were Harold and Judy, who had 3 children, Deborah, who was older like Susie's older sisters, and Arthur and Myra, who were close to our age, though both older. But the 4 of us would hang out, pal around, go to each other's basements and backyards. And this way, 2 blocks, Canarsie High Street, Avenue L, which had Kenny's Toy Store and Canarsie Theater that showed matinees for kids and Joe's Pizza, and not one but 2 candy stores. 2 blocks that way, Seaview Park, which was this huge park with seesaws and swing sets and a sliding pond and big open space to run around in. And 2 blocks past that, another movie theater that showed matinees for kids, conveniently located next to a Carvel. It was absolute paradise. And you know what? If you didn't want to leave the block, you didn't have to. Bungalow bar, good humor, freezer fresh, and Mr. Softy would come by at different points of the day selling ice cream. And flatbed trucks that had mini amusement rides would come down, and for $0.25 you could ride on the whip or on the glider. It was incredible. My parents had a car, so Susie and Jean and me and my mom would go to Buddy's amusement park once in a while, or take these exotic shopping trips to EJ Corvettes in Queens. It was absolutely heaven, and I was so happy. Unfortunately, my mother still had a void in her life that I hadn't filled, so she decided she needed a house in the suburbs, which we couldn't afford, but which we got anyhow. The best way to describe suburban Long Island at that time, go see the movie Blue in the Face, listen to Lou Reed talk about it. I wanted to jump up on that screen and kiss him, and I never cared for him before that movie. But suffice it to say, a developer bought a bunch of potato fields and put up tract housing, and that was the suburban paradise. It was desolate, it was empty, there was nothing, there were no ice cream trucks, there was no Avenue L, there was no good park to go to. And my friends from the neighborhood had all known each other from Queens and had come together as a group, and they were really kind of cliquey. So I was not the happy kid I once was, but we were there, and that was that. So I went to kindergarten, and that's fun for everyone, isn't it? And then I went to first grade, where you get your academics, and I've always been good with words, so I was in the top reading group. And numbers were really never my friend, so I was in the second to top reading math group, because I'm still pretty smart. Anyhow, things went along, and there was this tension that kept mounting in the house. And suddenly I kept hearing words like mortgage and mortgage payment, and The next thing I know, I'm being told we're going back to Brooklyn. My prayers had been answered. I was so excited. Only it wasn't what it was going to be before. We were going back to Brooklyn because in an attempt to save the house, my parents had rented it furnished, and we had nowhere to go. We were homeless. But again, I landed on all fours. My grandparents took us in. And it wasn't upstairs anymore. They had tenants up there. So now my grandparents and my bubby had their bedrooms. I had slept in a little room in a room called the Little Room on a daybed next to my new baby brother's crib. My parents were on a pull-out couch in the furnished basement. And a new kid had moved on the block, and she somehow became friendly with Susie and Myra and really didn't like me, and took it upon herself to convince them that whenever the adults weren't around, it was just us kids. Susie and Myra were in her trance, and they wouldn't talk to me, and they really wouldn't, and it was so frustrating. But the absolute worst was PS 115. See, I was younger than everyone. Even Susie was 6 months older, so I was in a grade below everybody by myself. I knew absolutely no one, and I was coming in the middle of the new kid in the middle of the year. Very awkward. But the worst part? The New York City school system at that point had completely and totally Kansas City their curriculum. Absolutely, just like the Rodgers and Hammerstein song. Everything was up to date, and they had gone about as far as they could go. And these kids were way advanced, and they had a method of learning that was completely foreign to the way I'd been taught. So for the first time in my life, and might I add the last, I was the dumb kid in class. And that was horrible. And it got so bad that I failed some test, and Mrs. Flom said to me, "Give me that paper. I want you to bring this home and have your parents sign it and bring it back to me tomorrow." And I put it in my desk, and the day went on, and I went home, and I'm walking home, and halfway there, I realized I left the paper. I left the paper in the desk, and I went into panic. I was in total panic mode, and by the time I got home, the extra 2 walks I had to walk, I was in full-on freak mode. Absolutely freaking out. And I don't know, I can't remember the specifics on this one, whether my grandmother had the day off, or I spoke to my bubby, or I caught my mother just when she took a tranquilizer. Because everyone seemed to see how upset I was and made it like it wasn't a big deal. It's okay, it's okay, it's all right. People make mistakes, it's all right. So the next day I went to school, and Mrs. Flom was not as understanding. "Where's my paper?" Sorry, I left it in the desk, I forgot it." "You forgot it? You forgot it, did you? Oh, really? You forgot it? Bring me that paper right now." And then she wrote something really nasty on it and said to me, "I will keep this on my desk and I will put it in your hand, and you want to bring it home and have it signed and return it to me tomorrow." So on the long walk home, I finally get there, and I'm trying to be, it's horrible being yelled at and humiliated in school, as some of you I'm sure know. But it was pretty cool because I knew I was told it would be all right. I made a mistake. However, at this point, maybe you'll understand why my parents were rejected by Spence Chapin. Because when I showed my mother the paper, she went full-on ballistic and began to beat the crap out of me. And beat the crap out of me with such ferocity, my screams prompted my bubby, who was mid-70s and had a heart condition and was not to be upset about anything, came running. She was just sitting in her bedroom watching The Edge of Night. She came running and screaming in Yiddish, "Volksmonster! What are you doing?" And the talk went back and forth in Yiddish, and my mother stopped hitting me, and my bubby ended up looking at her and saying something in Yiddish and waving a finger and turning around and walking into her room, and my mother went into the living room to watch her soap operas, and I assume I went in to watch TV with my bubby only because I remember she was so upset that she began to meticulously rearrange all the things in her drawer. About an hour later, her daughter, my grandmother, came home. She was working part-time as a bookkeeper's assistant. And the second she walked in the house, she knew something was wrong. She knew something was wrong, and she went immediately to talk to her mother and find out what happened. And the conversation went back and forth in Yiddish, and my grandmother couldn't believe this and went out and said to her daughter, what's wrong with you? What did you do? What's the matter? And my mother looked at me and said, "She knows what she did." And I just looked at my grandmother and I said, "It's my fault. I got a bad paper." And my bubby just looked like I'd thrown her under the bus and looked disgusted and turned her back and went back into her room to organizing her drawers. And so were the days of my life, 5 days a week. Get up, go to school, be the dumb kid in class, eat lunch alone, be the dumb kid in class, go home. Get up, go to school, be the dumb kid in class, eat lunch alone, be the dumb kid in class, go home. And this went on and on and on. Except for one day. One day, as I'm sitting in class right around lunchtime, suddenly at the door, I see Jean, Susie's mom, my friend's mom, my mom's friend. And she signals me to come over. And I come over and she tells me she's taking me out to lunch. I'm not gonna eat alone. She's taking me out of that hellhole and we're going to the L and we're gonna have pizza. And I had a slice of pizza and I had a great drink because it's sweet and it's purple and I'm neat. And then afterwards we left and she took me to the candy store next to the movie theater and I bought a box of Jawbreakers. And these were the good ones. The ones where the box had the cellophane so you could shake it and see the colors, because I had to make sure I had at least one purple one in the box. And afterwards you could open the top of the box and blow in it and the cellophane would vibrate. So it was like a kazoo, it was like Cracker Jacks. You got two candy and a prize. And come to think of it, the structural integrity of those boxes pretty much was on a par with what you get out of a Cracker Jack box. But excuse the digression. So I went back to class that day. The one thing I hadn't been the entire time, and the one thing I never was again until I got the hell out of that school, I went back to class happy. Really happy. You know, I've been very lucky and very blessed in this world. I have had pizza in Grimaldi's in Brooklyn, and on John's on Bleecker Street, and Original Famous Ray's when he was original and famous, and I went to a Living Foods restaurant on vacation in Maui and ate a raw foods pizza, vegan, and I went to Amsterdam and I was on a canal boat and I had pizza with hemp seeds. And 2 weeks ago on 21st Street at the Natural Gourmet, I took a class in vegan pizza making that literally blew my mind. But I will tell you, if I live to be 110 or I drop dead an hour after the show, no matter how much pizza I eat, there will never be another piece as magnificent as a piece of pizza that Jean took me out for. Because you see, when my friend's mom and my mom's friend took her daughter's friend and her friend's daughter out to grab a slice of pizza, what she was really doing was taking a little kid that felt more dead than alive inside out for to grab a renewing, unforgettable slice of life. Thank you.